Welcome back, everyone, to Free Kick, the Fantasy W podcast. We're doing our Round 8 review, and we've once again got the whole gang together. How's it going, guys?
Very well, thank you.
Yeah, doing well, thanks.
Look, I am fine. I'm okay.
Why don't we start with how you went this week then, Liam, since you're just okay?
Well, look, I think it's pretty clear that I didn't do spectacularly. 1,121 points, round rank of 1,100 odd, and an overall rank that didn't really move. I'm at 1041.
Yeah, I mean to get back in the top 1,000?
That is a goal. I think the other goal is just to continue to play this game that frustrates me so much.
No, I'm sure you'll be fine.
It's been a pretty rough couple of weeks.
Oh, I was just going to say, thank God at least you didn't have a Rising Star nomination traded out this week, Liam. That's an improvement.
Nearly did.
Yeah.
I nearly did. Cynthia Hamilton kicked 2 goals, and I was sitting there at the game just sweating. Not again.
Yeah. Liam was probably considering leaving at halftime, just thinking, you know what, I can't watch this.
That combined with the fact that I went along to that Bombers game expecting, more cakewalk type territory, the Bombers looking really good, and then Sydney were ahead at every break until the final siren. Did not enjoy that. That was not
Thankfully, they pulled through for you though.
Yeah, thank bloody God.
What about you, Jono? How'd you go this week?
Yeah, look, not my best week. I ended up having to change my trades very last minute to avoid a donut, thanks to the omission of Ruby Sargent Wilson. And I think because of that, I had to keep a lot of players that I had no interest in keeping. So, yeah, definitely not a good score. 1,181. It pushed me out to 275th. So I think I'm going to be looking for some uniques this week. Should be fun.
Yes, I think we all might be doing that. Over to Mr. Unique himself, Will. How'd you go?
I am coming home with a wet sail this season. I've probably left my run a bit too late, but I scored 1327. Very happy with that for a round rank of 96, which moves me to 333. And I'm rapidly closing in on yourself and Jono, so watch out, you two. I'm coming for you.
You absolutely are. You've actually already closed in on me because I had another average week. Not too good, not too bad. 1,118. Round rank in the 11,000s. Actually worst of the bunch here. To bump my overall rank down a couple of hundred spots to 467. So still top 500, but that's not a sentence I like saying out loud. So,
Mel, it's nice to know that finally someone after 5 weeks in a row can have a worse team than I did.
Yes.
It's been especially tough because even the free kickers have been beating you in the last week, actually. So.
Yeah, look, I don't have Kiara Bowers, and I'm kind of making do with Anne Hatchard.
You chose not to have Kiara Bowers.
No. I'm pretty sure, Mel, I had not enough money to get Kiara Bowers.
Yeah, okay. Well, I gave my -3 this week to Ballard, who I actually really don't know what I was thinking with that trade. She's done probably what you would expect her to do, around 20s and 30s.
Can I just quickly clarify that you're not talking about the Port Adelaide Alex Ballard, you're talking about the Adelaide Crows Abby Ballard.
Yes, I'm not talking about the Ballard that I got super excited about in round 2 that then got cut from the pod. I'm talking about the other Ballard. You'd think I could pick the right Ballard, but no. That was a deliberate choice to go with the Crows Ballard, but not really sure what I was thinking at that moment. What about you guys?
My -3 this week went to Gab Pound, who put up a 28. I don't think I've seen a player get more of the ball and yet fail to dispose of it. I think she would have been caught holding the ball 3 times, tackled about another 4. It was a rough watch.
Yeah, Jono and I were at this game, and every time we were like, oh, Gab Pound's got it, and she's been tackled again. It just was a consistent effort across the full 4 quarters. It just didn't translate to actual scores.
I brought a couple of Carlton fans to that game, and I was like, the one you're looking for has the afro type hair with the big curly hair and the black headband. So watch out for her, and it's like, and she's been tackled again.
She was the player I was planning on trading out to get in Kiara Bowers, and then ended up holding her to avoid a donut. If I had got Bowers in and copped the donut, I would have been about 70 points better off. So, lesson learned for next time. Yeah.
Lesson learned, if Bowers is the option, go Bowers even if it costs you a 0, because it's going to be better than
It'll put you back in Bowersness.
Yeah.
back in Bowersness.
Liam?
I am going to give my -3 to Anne Hatchard with a 60, 61, but with the C on top, because I don't have Bowers and I don't have Marinoff, and it burnt. That's a lower score in, I think, maybe 2.5 years. And for it to come in a round where Kiara Bowers goes 140 plus.
Yeah, that's 37.
I don't count that. That's
Injury
a fake
affected.
Score. That's an injury affected score, not a real score. And even then, like, I think the last one was maybe low 70s. Like, I don't know if everyone's been reading my captain's call articles, but I've been campaigning for her to be called the Rock because she's so absurdly consistent. and then she put out a 60 with a captain score, whilst 2 other captain options went 130 plus. It was a hard week to watch.
Nickname rescinded, I guess. Right there.
I still like. I think it'll be something that'll stick from season to season, but you certainly won't be getting it in captain's call this week.
Even with the captain, she still got less than Bowers.
Thanks, Matt. I didn't know that. I couldn't figure that one out. Thanks.
Sorry.
Also, just quickly on that 37 that she got injured in, I'm pretty sure she was on 37 at about quarter time, or 30 at about quarter time, and then didn't score for the rest of the game, basically. So that just shows how good she is at scoring. But yeah, a rough one from a player who's been regularly featuring in those +3s this year from Hatchard.
Yeah. And Will?
I hate to do this because she's an absolute favourite here at the podcast, but my -3 goes to Fremantle captain Hayley Miller. 54 was one of my lowest scores for my premiums. However, I will say it does come with the caveat she was coming off a knee injury, and she's got a few good matchups ahead, so I'm not too worried.
Indeed she does. Freya's got an awesome run.
I think the other problem there is Fremantle were trying whatever they could to actually kick some goals. So the only thing worse than my side over the weekend was Fremantle in the forward 50. So they threw Emma O'Driscoll and Hayley Miller up into the forward line, and that just corresponded with some lower scoring.
I'll tell you what, if they want to throw Hayley Miller forward against Sydney and she can kick a bag, I'd be very, very happy with that.
For a couple.
A bag usually implies more than one. So yes, a couple of goals would also be a bag.
Yes, a bag is usually 4 or 5, so...
My bad, I thought a bag was 1.
No.
One bag.
I'd like to kick a bag of goals. It's a very empty bag, but it's a bag nonetheless.
Singular one. Well, put it this way, I'll take any goals that Hayley is willing to kick next week, and more, so I'm hoping... I've picked her as a long-term one for these last 2 rounds, and I'm just hoping that knee injury that she copped last week doesn't slow her down.
Yeah. I've got going to break all the rules. I've got not only a special mention, but a special mention where I chuck a -3 on a rookie to shout out Frew. Federica Frew, thanks for that awesome insight last week, Jono. She was a great pickup. She went from a solid -3 for the first, 3 quarters, to then finish on a 3. But the only upside to this is that because her break-even was -2, she's still making money.
She still made money. I gotta say, Liam did pick this one, saying that he wasn't a fan of the role. And I was also lucky because I would have had Frew on field, but I couldn't afford her because of my late shuffle. So I ended up moving to Jeslow instead, who scored a 67 on my bench, but much better option than Frew.
Yeah, the podcast won't have heard it, but in our group chat, there was a lot of Federica Frew chat before I heard the podcast, and I really didn't understand it. We've watched 5 games from her this year, and she'd not done it. She'd been a deep forward. Bonnie Toogood, even though she is the goal kicker, was the one up the ground. And lo and behold, Federica Frew sat in the goal square for most of the weekend. So
she had a pretty good round last week.
She did, but that was...
Plus, I think the problem is you don't get a better matchup for a deep forward than Sydney.
Well, that's what I was going to say. Yeah. Like, we knew the role. We didn't hide the role. We just thought it was going to... Quite frankly, I thought Essendon were a better team. That's what I'll say there. Yeah.
Dem's fighting words.
But also, in fairness to Sydney, the one, they're probably their strongest position are their medium and tall defender stocks. Like Bell Smith and Brenna Tarrant are two of their more consistent players who've, played games before now. Like, all right, we're not going to really get the past, but I think that was, a risk that people took. It was not one I wanted to take, and I think it's come to bear that was not the play this week.
Yeah, look, let's change this -3. It's not to Federica Frew, it's to me. I apologise to the 7.4% of coaches who picked her up last week. That's my bad. I did not mean
41 in the top 100 or something like that.
Yeah, and look, I did it as well. I didn't have her on my field, but I've definitely slowed my cash generation to an absolute screaming halt with that 3. So.
What about your +3s?
Look, my +3 is going to Chelsea Randall this week. I know we're going to be talking about her later because she is injured. She's going to be out for the coming weeks. But to put up 103 in her last game for us, remarkable effort. So well done, Chelsea Randall.
Good way to go out. What about you, Liam?
I think the +3 has definitely got to go to Jazz Garner for what she did against Port Adelaide. I reckon if we were playing Supercoach fantasy scoring points, she would be 200 plus points because she was absurd out of the stoppages on the weekend and was the second highest scorer for the round and was kind of the only thing that kept my team together.
Nice. Well,
I've gone a bit different from my +3. The player I gave my +3 scored an 85, and that was Jamie Lambert. So still not a really massive premium score, but it was just exactly what I wanted from my cheap option at M5. Bought her for under 100 grand. 85, exactly what I wanted. So very happy with Jamie Lambert's game there.
I'd like to say that it's almost offensive that you're saying 85 is great for, exactly what I expected for an M5. Like, she could have easily had 100 plus, and then that would have been a real good +3. But apparently, someone who scores 1,300 plus points, 85, so that's it. That's my best player on the ground.
I mean, I could have just gone, my +3 is Kiara Bowers
you
for scoring 141.
No one else
but
has.
I decided to mix it up. That's why Mel's calling me Mr. Unique, because I've decided to do something a bit different. So yes, Jamie Lambert, my +3, I'm sticking by it.
No, I still reckon it's a good call. She did look good on the weekend, and she even bobbed up for a very, very nice goal from the goal square. It was beautiful to watch.
Yes, very nice. I've given my +3 to Parker. Mostly because I was getting a little bit disheartened about her in the last few weeks and even watching the game. But she came through, had a great week, and the other thing I quite like about this is that it seems that quite a few of the top 100 or so have traded her out to make space for Bowers. So she was relatively unique compared to where she was a few weeks ago. So great week for her to have an awesome game.
Yeah, this is another player that I've talked about on the captain's call. She has a unique ability to kind of put together 70-point quarters after being quiet for a quarter and a half. And I think she was only on like 13 or 14 points at quarter time on the weekend. And there really are no other options to get first possessions, second possessions at GWS. And she even does what Bowers does at her best and Emma Swanson does, where she's taking that second kick coming out of half back. And that really just does help.
Yeah, and she was also playing quite an interesting role against the Hawks, where she was almost sitting a kick behind the stoppages when it was in the Hawthorn backline. So just outside the GWS forward line, she was actually sitting just behind the 50, taking the intercept marks to kick it back inside 50 for GWS, which meant that she got quite a few extra kick marks that was really useful to get up to that higher score.
Yeah, fantastic work there. Looking at how everyone else has gone with their fantasy scores, so another disgustingly huge score for first. We've had the Flamingos coming in with 1,440, so well done. That is just outstanding. The overall first is a new one. We've now got the Goats. 9,892 points there in first, which is a good 350 or so ahead of overall 100th, which is the West Coast Coolers. Nice name. Which means that you needed to score, 1,292 to stay in the top 100. Safe to say, I mean, outside of Will, the rest of us did not get even close to that. So, hence why we fell. So, for this episode, we're going to mix it up a little bit because we're getting really close to the end. Even if you're in the top 100 or not in the top 100, either way, you're probably looking for some uniques or maybe some players that you haven't really considered that much before to help boost your score. So we're going to do running through the left fielders. So line by line, defenders, mids and forwards. We've each prepared what we consider to be a left fielder. So the defenders, we've had some shocking news come through today that's probably throwing everyone's backlines all over the place. Jono, you broke it to us. Why don't you break it to the listeners?
Yeah, so we've had Chelsea Randall go down to an ankle injury, and she's going to be out this coming weekend, which means I think with only 2 rounds to go, it's definitely a must trade. I don't think there's really any other option you have. So for yourself as a listener or the other 94 people in the top 100 that are dealing with this problem, the question is, where do you go? And obviously we've got at what we consider our best players. If you haven't got Ruby Slisher, great option. If you haven't got Emma Carney, a great option. And then we had Peterson as a surprise mention in our Sweet 16 last week, who I think put up a great score on the weekend. I think those 3, if you haven't got any of them, are very, very solid options. But we're going to try and throw up some more left field options for you, just because we're coming into the end of the season. We want some unique players, as you say, Mel. So one player that I have been sort of waiting on all season is Natalie Grider. So Brisbane defender. She's in no teams in the top 100 currently, and only 4.2% of teams in the entire competition. But I really, really like her for a couple of reasons. Firstly, great end to the season. She plays Hawthorn and then Collingwood. She is definitely a mark taker. I think she's going to be racking it up a lot against the Hawks. The Hawks dump kick, so I would expect her to take a lot of intercepts and be able to run up the wing and sort of deliver inside 50. And defenders against Collingwood have done pretty well recently. So I think she's in for a good last 2 rounds and is a little bit cheaper for you to bring in if you don't want to, if you need to be making money and trying to make an upgrade on the other side of it.
I completely agree that Grider was someone that we kind of all looked at last year. Just your comment on Hawthorn, though. Are you not a little concerned going up against Hawthorn that even if they do dump kick, there's probably just not going to be enough possession kind of chipping around deep in defence to be able to get a good score? Because I think the equivalent player against GWS, for example, is someone like a Tani Evans, that kind of mid to slightly taller defender who takes a number of marks on dump kicks. Tony Evans only had 37 last week after having gone at 71 the week before. I would be a little concerned that there may not be enough ball in her area to kind of meaningfully go round, because you also think they've got Brie Conan, who had her, whatever it was, 150 Basquillion earlier in the season when...
That was Phoebe Monahan,
sorry. But I think Brie Conan has also had a game like that before. Like there is a glut of potential options to take intercept marks. That would be my only issue.
No, I understand that, but I think there's a very big difference between the Giants' style of play and the Lions. The Lions spread and kick mark a lot more. They're the highest mark taking team this season. You compare them to the Giants, who they're all about run and dash and trying to move the ball quickly. So there's a lot more points in the Lions style. And if you go back to that Phoebe Monahan game, I think that was against the Giants, all of the defenders, and that was a shellacking, the Lions over the Giants, all the defenders racked up big points and big marks. So I see that as a very big possibility against the Hawks. I know what you're thinking. The Hawks are an excellent side, 3-1 the past few weeks and so close to being 4-0, but I just don't quite think we can match it with the Brisbane Lions.
Not quite. Maybe a little bit behind, yeah.
Yeah, we'll get closer than Adelaide did for sure. They're only the reigning premiers.
Liam, I can see you've got someone down here that I have been very keen on, and actually the only reason I haven't brought them in so far is that as a Freo supporter, I can't really justify having 4 Eagles in my side. Why don't you tell us about Charlie Thomas?
Yeah, Charlie Thomas was someone that I believe Will talked up. Maybe not. I can't remember whether or not it was on the pod, but definitely once you talked up in our conversations.
2 weeks ago.
I'm talking like way back when, like at the beginning of the year.
She was a player that Hayley Bullis brought up as someone who was of interest, and I thought she had a good end to last season, so one to watch. Started the season a bit slowly, but I'll let you take it from there, Liam.
Yeah, Charlie Thomas has been in some ripping hot form. She is only 2.1% owned and has 4 owners inside the top 100. Now, she is, I believe at this stage, the 4th or 5th most expensive forward, but you're still going to be making... defender. You're still going to be making, pause for dramatic effect, whilst I find it.
Money.
Lots of it.
You're still going to be making money. 88? You're still going to be...
She's 88.
Yeah, she's 88k. So, sorry, she's the 6th highest, most expensive forward, sitting in between Gilly Gilroy and Katie Lynch. She shall not be named. But you're still going to be making, more than 30k as a downgrade from Chelsea Randall. Also, given who she's going to be going up against in the back end of the season, she's going to be playing against Melbourne in the final round, who are not particularly accurate, and she takes kick-ins. And then I also believe she has Western Bulldogs, who are hilariously inaccurate, and takes all kick-ins.
Yeah,
so
sounds good.
That seems like a great combo to me.
I was seeing Sophie McDonald playing a fair chunk of that game, that position. In the last Eagles game. Is there any risk that some of the points get distributed there?
I might take this one. Sophie McDonald basically plays the pure full-back role, and I think that if she was taking the kick-outs, it was purely because Thomas was either elsewhere on the field or off the ground. I think that's not too much of a worry in terms of point scoring, and I really like this option because at the moment Charlie Thomas is actually sitting in my side.
Fantastic.
Yeah. We haven't got kick-in stats for the round 8 just passed, but Charlie Thomas has had 6 in each of the 3 rounds prior to this week. So that's still...
Free 18 points there.
That's free 18 points every single week. That's why, even though she's priced at 62, she's coming in at a 3-round average of 74. So definitely one that I would put my name pretty strongly to, and very lowly owned at this stage.
Yeah, nice. What about you, Will?
Yeah, I really like the Charlie Thomas one. I've gone for someone who's a bit of a more short-term prospect, a bit riskier, but the benefit of this player is they're only priced at 54k, and that is Sarah Sansonetti. So Sarah Sansonetti's come over to Collingwood from the Tigers, has basically been coming off the bench in every single game. But in the last couple of weeks, she started playing a bit more of a wing half-back role that's just... meant that her scoring crept up a little bit, and in the last couple of weeks she scored a 70 and a 60. So if you're willing to take a gamble on someone who's a bit lower priced, she's only 0.8% owned and 0 in the top 100. She's the sort of player that if you are looking to maybe split Chelsea Randall into 2 players, which is exactly what I'm doing, you could probably move Randall down to someone and one of your bench rookies up to a Sansonetti, and hopefully you're going to get 2 players who can average around about that 60 mark.
Yeah, sounds good.
Are you worried at all about Collingwood's fixture? Because they're playing North Melbourne and then the Brisbane Lions.
I am a little bit, but I'm hoping that it suits her playing off half-back because it means that those 2 stronger teams, the ball will be down there a bit more. I don't expect her to average... upwards of 60, 70 like some of the others we've mentioned. But I think for a good 30k less, I think she's a really good option if you are looking to just complete that backline of yours. Because I know a lot of people are still fielding players like Indy Tahau, a few of the other ones in that backline who are probably, if you can move on, aren't bad options. So I think she's someone that has a lot of upside, even if there is a bit of risk connected to it.
Just to be negative Nancy over here, she's never played Brisbane before, but has played 2 games against North Melbourne for a grand total of 50 points.
One thing I will say, though, is that she's playing a different role to what she's traditionally played. So.
I'm just being deliberately unhelpful at this stage.
No, I
deliberately obtuse.
I appreciate that you've done it because I think it means that she's guaranteed to go well now. Every time you've done this.
I know, I'm just a bloody...
It's backfired spectacularly.
Midas touch over here. I'm just a Midas touch this season.
Yeah, the Collingwood backline is absolutely humming at the moment, and she's a key part of that. So, to me, there is a bit of risk involved, but her last 2 weeks have suggested that she could be a value pick. So yeah, Sarah Sansonetti is a bit of a cheaper option, but Mel, I think you've got a really nice, almost premium option now, given how well she's been going the last few weeks.
Yeah, so I've got down Georgia Garnett, who plays for GWS. She was one that we mentioned a couple of weeks ago because she had this huge score, and we were like, wow, where did that come from? She looks like a great player. Unfortunately, she followed that 89 up with a 29, but she's done it again in round 8, up in the high 80s. For someone that has that high ceiling, she's only priced at about 86 grand and a priced out points of 60. While she's listed as a defender, she's actually been playing as forward all year, so that kind of complicates it a little bit, given that they're going up against Richmond and Gold Coast in the next couple of weeks. But she's one that's moderately owned, so she's got 5 in the top 100 own her, which makes you think maybe they're onto something. But overall, her ownership is still quite low at 2.9%. So I think she's one of those slightly less left field, but still not too highly owned.
I think if you want to actually enjoy watching the games, you could happily pick Georgia Garnett, because I think you could say she probably has a top 5 set of hands in the AFLW. Her ability to come down with every single mark is pretty spectacular. And we saw more of that on the weekend. My question for the group is, I think the Gold Coast matchup is delightful. I think that's the kind of game that she will dominate. She plays as a high half forward role, kind of gets everywhere. My question for everyone is, who is her direct opponent when she plays Richmond? Because I think that the one player that might be a problem is Eilish Sheeran.
I actually think that, just quickly to what you were saying, she's a lot like Bonnie Toogood, where she's just such a clean mark of the ball. And after that Hawthorn game, Liam did send us all a message saying, this Georgia Garnett is pretty good at football. So I actually think this is a really good option. A bit more expensive, as we've said, but I think that even against Richmond, who do have a pretty organised defence, I think she's shown this year that she can score pretty well regardless of the opposition that she is coming across. I would just say that it's, as the most expensive option, is just the one thing to consider. But as a downgrade from Randall, I don't mind it at all.
So to me, the big flag is that Richmond is probably going to win this game. Because I was looking at if you look at her last 4, she's had 2 above 80 and 2 under 50. The 2 games above 80, they won pretty comfortably against Hawthorn and Carlton. And the 2 games under 50, they lost to Collingwood and to West Coast. So I just worry with a key forward. I think she's either going to put up a big score or a low score. You'd have to be confident that GWS stand a good chance against Richmond.
So you say that, but in the game that GWS got absolutely belted by Brisbane, she still managed to score a 64 against a pretty tidy and organised defence in Brisbane. So while I agree that the last couple of losses aren't great signs, I do think that she's a good enough player that she has the ability to do well. Whether she does is a completely different question.
I think the other thing to take away from that, not necessarily wins or losses, it's actually the matchup, because I believe that she got McDonald against West Coast, and McDonald's been particularly good as a lockdown defender this year, and then got absolutely smothered against Collingwood, who are by far and away up there with the most organised defences in the comp. And I think that kind of contributes to my trepidation. And I also think that someone like Eilish Sheeran can match her for size and is also an incredible intercept player. The kind of person that revels being kicked at consistently.
That'd be a fantastic matchup if it happens, I'll say that. Garnett and Sheeran. 2
of the most entertaining players that aren't midfielders, I reckon.
Well, moving on to the midfielders then, maybe.
Sorry, before we move on, I do just want to quickly mention, we got a question in about Katie Lynch, and I feel pretty obliged to answer it and just have a quick discussion, guys. Obviously coming off a ropeable 2 weeks, and it's off the back of basically just her lowest 2 disposal counts all season. I think she had a lockdown role against Melbourne, but I really can't explain what happened last week. Only the 12 touches and a lot more handballs than she's had all season. Almost half the amount of marks that she usually gets. Does anyone have an idea of why that might be the case?
One thing I will say is she didn't look to be taking as many kickouts. which was interesting. I think Eleanor Brown took a few of the kick-outs. So some of those easy kick disposals that we're used to with Katie Lynch didn't quite happen. In terms of the marks are down a bit as well. But yeah, I think that's one of the big things is I think Bulldogs are sharing those kick-ins a bit, which has harmed Lynch's scoring ability.
I just don't think that goes enough to explaining the problem, because that might take a 42 up to a 50, but that doesn't explain the difference between 42 and 71 and 92, which is what she'd done kind of the prior 2 weeks before these two down ones. Maybe I don't understand football enough to understand why, but she's been left out of far too many chains going forward. And she got burnt multiple times for short 45-degree kicks on the weekend for inexplicable reasons from a fan's perspective.
Yeah, it seems like almost a shift in the game style, perhaps, just trying to maybe move it a bit quicker rather than holding that possession. But yeah, it's an interesting one. It's definitely burned a few coaches when they picked her up as a star recruit.
Don't know what that's like.
Yeah, wouldn't know it.
So, she was in our top 5 of the Sweet 16, and we've already had a bit of issues in our backline now that Randall's out. Is she one that you hold? Do we think she's coming back from this? I guess is the real question.
If you've got Randall, I think you almost have to hold, because I think there's other more important things to do. It's a tough one because, and I always end up saying this, it depends on what you need to do, but gee, I'd be worried about the way that they've been going about it in the last couple of weeks, and a matchup against the West Coast this week that could go really well or could go really, really poorly if it's not down there.
Who scores more points for the rest of the year? Is it Charlie Thomas, Katie Lynch, or Emma Carney?
I'm hoping Charlie Thomas, because she's the one I have.
I'd happily say Emma Carney unless she cops a hard tag, which I don't see happening in the next 2 games.
I agree.
Yeah, I think Carney, then Thomas, then Lynch would be my thoughts.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah, I think I'm going to be holding Lynch. Back your premiums is a pillar of mine, but I certainly wouldn't be trading her in if I don't have her.
Yeah. Well, I was super keen to trade her out last week, and then I got shut down on that idea, but I might consider trading her out again. So we'll see.
Yeah, look, second thing I've apologised for on this podcast, my bad, Mel.
I make my own decisions. You're just giving your opinions. I have unfortunately followed them to my own demise.
Goodness me.
Oh gosh. Anyway,
moving along.
Midfielders. Let's start with you, Will. I know you're super passionate about your midfielder pick here.
Yeah, Choppy Lambert. Gave him my +3. Still only 1.6% owned and only 2 in the top 100. I brought her in last week when she was priced under 100k, so it was a bargain buy. But if you do want her, she still is only priced at just over 100k at 103.40. She's actually, since I looked earlier, she's up to 1.8. So that looks like a person or two has brought her in. But yeah, she scored an 85. She looked really, really good against a pretty good midfield unit in Fremantle. They've got a tough couple of matchups, Jamie Lambert, but she has shown the ability in the past to score well against some top teams. So I think as an underpriced option, which seems to be my theme for this segment, I think she's a good one.
I think the other thing that she's done, which is almost ironic, is when she's in her best scoring form, she's kicking goals. So even though she was playing as a forward for large swaths of this season, she bobbed up for a goal on the weekend. And that kind of helps to anchor some of her massive scores in the back end of last year. I think that bodes well, notwithstanding, a tough run of Will. You should have these off the top of your head.
North and Brisbane.
Yeah, okay. North, I don't think is necessarily the most restrictive, but I'd be a little bit concerned about Brisbane.
Yeah, to me, she was a sort of I think. If you don't bring her in this week, you're not bringing her in the last week, put it that way. I wouldn't bring her in against Brisbane, but she's still cheap enough now that if you don't quite have the money to push up to some of the other options that we're probably about to talk about or one of your Uber premiums, definitely a good alternative option.
Well, for my midfielders, I'm excited to be talking about some more Freo players. We've been waiting for Freo's run home with the 2 easy games coming up against Sydney and Hawthorn, who, Hawthorn might not be as easy given how bad Freo are at the moment. But
before you say this pick, Mel, I just want to say this is probably the most left field pick of any of the ones we've been going for, and I love it.
Yeah, of course I really like it too.
I love it.
Oh, well.
I like the thinking. I like the process.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
That makes me feel fantastic. I've gone Nikki Gore. So we know you've already got Bowers, you've already got Miller, classics in the midfield there. Freo have had a couple of terrible injuries and players in and out, so their team's kind of in shatters at the moment. But Nikki Gore, she's priced at $73,000 for a price at score 51. She's come across from Adelaide, where her scoring was really up and down, and so her peaks are about over 60, but she was really inconsistent. This season, except for the first couple of games, she's actually been quite consistent, chopping between 40 and 60, which is a good sign. I'm hoping that, given the fixture coming up, that she's got some good games in her. She's also very lowly owned, so 0.5% in total and 0 in the top 100. Yeah, so quite a bit cheaper than some of the other ones. What do you guys like about her?
I just love how left field it is. I think that there's some midfield openings. There's some midfield openings at Freo with Gab O'Sullivan out, and I think playing against Hawthorn and Sydney would be a bit friendlier to the outside players like Nikki Gore. At $30,000 cheaper than my cheap option, I think it's the sort of option that could very easily go wrong, but if it goes right, bloody oath, it'll be the best pick you've ever made, Mel. I love it.
Look, I actually can't probably shuffle her in my team because I've got a couple of other problems, but namely my terrible trades from the last 2 weeks. But yeah, I reckon she's a good pick.
I think if you wanted to, this has the hallmarks of an Emily piece to my mind.
Easy.
Who had a very unfortunate situation where he did her ACL at training. I feel like I'd be remiss to mention that, given how much I've been a little bit harsh this season. Maybe a middle point option at Fremantle that's a little bit more midfield time than Nikki Gore. You could definitely look at a Dana East, just as a third or fourth fiddle midfielder. Still looks good and has an incredibly good run. He's only $77,000, priced at 54. I think if she can score 60 against Collingwood, I'd say 70, 75 to kind of round out the season. If you're getting that 20 points of value as your M5, if you're like me and really scraping to the end of the season, I don't think it's a bad option at all.
I also want to throw in Ellie Runnels there, who scored an 84 this week.
Yeah.
So there's a bit of value in that Fremantle midfield. Potentially for the next couple of weeks, if you are looking for someone under $80,000.
Liam, what about you?
Yeah, so I have gone with Melbourne's Liv Purcell, who's looked excellent in the back half of the year and really seems to have found her feet at Melbourne after now spending, the equivalent of a season's worth of games working her way into that midfield rotation and really nailing down a spot. She comes in with only 1.6% ownership, 2 in the top 100. She does finish with an excellent matchup against the West Coast Eagles, and is coming off 2 scores of 109 against the Western Bulldogs and 108 against Gold Coast. The only mini flag for Liv Purcell is that she is going up against Essendon, who don't give up particularly big scores to midfielders, but you would have said the same thing about the Western Bulldogs, and she put up 109 against them and could have also had a goal. So I really like Liv Purcell. I really like the fact that she's a high possession midfielder. She's had over 25 possessions in each of the last 4 games. And my only another little flag is that you will be annoyed if you're forced to watch her by how many hand passes she has. The same with Eliza West, the handball happy sisters in the Melbourne midfield, but she's an excellent player, has gone in the kind of 90s in the past, and this is kind of her best run of form, and we're kind of really seeing the potential that she had at Geelong as well.
Yeah, you forget that she was an All-Australian in her last season at Geelong, so great alternative option in that midfield.
And Jono?
Look, I've gone with Charlie Rowbottom as my pick. I think she has had a phenomenal season. Really going to be a superstar of the comp. But even so, is still very, very lowly owned. So last 3-round average of 89, season average of 87, but comes home with a very, very good matchups. So I think she plays Carlton and then GWS in the next 2, both of whom give up a lot of points. And I think with only 8 in the top 100 currently holding her, I think it's a very, very good, unique pick if you're trying to fill out your midfield.
Yeah, I like it. She was an option I was thinking of a few weeks ago, so a bit more highly owned, so a bit less left field, as Mel said regarding Georgia Garnett, but still, as you say, 6.3%, 8 in the top 100.
Yeah, she's even made an appearance in the Liam's potential captain, so she's obviously got some great potential there.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Well, she's definitely got a ceiling on her. Some of the games she's put up have been huge this season.
Yeah, she had a run there where she went 118, 97, 96. But just while we're here, if you want a player who has the same great run, but is 14k cheaper, Jono, one of your favourites, in Ali Drennan.
Yeah.
Are you not tempted by that little bit of extra cash that you can get while still having that elite run? And also, she has the ceiling. Maybe not 118.
0.8%
she
owned
is
as well.
So unique.
Yeah, no, I was definitely tossing up Alison Drennan. I think she's a very good option as well. I went with Rowbottom just for the ceiling. I think if you've only got 2 matches to go, Rowbottom's a better tackler. But yeah, Drennan, great player. And when she's on, she is really on. So yeah, no qualms with picking her.
Yeah. You say that. The ceiling of Drennan is only 7 points lower this season than Rowbottom, and Drennan has the same great form in the last 2 games. She's got 90 and 88. So
yeah,
I don't think you can go wrong with either of those options. I think obviously Rowbottom has that potential to go even bigger and better because she is this kind of untapped font of extreme power through the midfield. But
that's what always tempts me is the number 1 pick. What are they capable of? Sometimes you see these players have these really big ends to the season as they're getting more and more comfortable with the game. So that it's just teasing me a little bit. I'm excited for it.
Yeah, I think the unique option for players in this sort of band where you're not quite in that top 100, but you're looking to just try and get someone who might just go big, which is why I would personally go Drennan at this stage, just because 0.8, we know Drennan can go massive. She did it last year. She's done it this year. If she managed to pull out a couple of hundreds, you might just be able to find yourself sneaking up on that top 100.
It'd have to be a very big sneak for me, but sneaking nonetheless.
Always hope, Mel. There's always hope.
At least you have Bowers, right?
I do.
Like, I don't. You have the most informed player, I would say, ever.
Yeah, I was about to say, this patch of form, like, Jono mentioned it before, where Ebony Marinoff is in, like, probably the second best patch of form ever. And it's just happened to coincide with Bowers having the best.
Yeah, what a shame for
It's
her.
just crazy how good those two are going right now.
Yeah. Oh, people that have had both of them for a little while are going to be absolutely coasting.
Just quickly before we move off midfielders, we did get a question on Twitter from the Duke about a few midfielders. The first one was Megan Kaufman, whether or not she's going to get some midfield minutes. I think that you got 2 sources of information there. One, the rest, like she's had minutes kind of throughout the rest of the season. But then secondly, Kiara Bowers talked about this in her interview on the AFLW Fantasy Pod, which you should definitely go and listen to for a kind of bit more information about what that Fremantle midfield looks like. But it certainly sounds like she will be in and around the midfield. And we've already talked about the fact that Fremantle are options. And then the next question was what are our thoughts on Liv Purcell and Ali Anderson? Now, I've already talked to Liv Purcell. I think she's an excellent option at this time of year alongside those Gold Coast midfielders. But what are our thoughts on Ali Anderson?
Yeah, I've been saying Ali Anderson's been underrated since the pre-season, which Mel was always happy to tell me. She's had an exceptional year Ali Anderson. Got a really favourable matchup this week in particular against Hawthorn, and then follows up against Collingwood, who we saw can give teams points. I think she's a good alternative option to some of the other ones. Still not too highly priced as well if you are looking to go that way. She's only 128 and only 3.6% owned, 4 in the top 100. So another one of those ones in that if you're looking for a sideways or something like that or an upgrade, I think she's a really good option, Ellie Anderson.
I think my only thing would be to say that Charlie Rowbottom is basically the same price and has the better run.
Yeah, and I think that's fair. I think Anderson's probably got the highest ceiling, but whether she hits it is that question, as you say, Liam. So I think at this stage, with 2 rounds to go, you're basically just gambling your percentages, which is why I think you're saying Rowbottom based on the matchups.
I think if we go back to that, when we were talking about Nat Grider, I was saying that Brisbane playing GWS is going to be very similar look to Brisbane playing Hawthorn this week. Was that the round that Ali Anderson went 138?
Ali Anderson did in fact score 138 against Gold Coast.
Gold Coast following
against
week.
GWS.
Yeah, okay.
Against GWS, she scored 66.
Don't get those confused, Jono.
Yeah.
It's very different.
So that was actually
very
her second
different.
highest.
They're very different sides.
That was actually her second lowest score for the year against GWS, which was quite interesting. So it's one of those ones where she's in great form. She's gone 192 and 112 in the last 3 against some good opposition as well in Adelaide and North Melbourne. So form is on her side, I'll say that.
I think the big thing is that she scored 100 against Essendon. She's one of the few mids to do that, and they're an expansion side, and she's got an expansion side. I don't think it's a bad call, and if she will probably feature kind of at the back end of Captain's Call this week.
Very nice.
All right, let's move forward finally.
Let's move forward to the forwards. So I've got here Courtney Wakefield. So I'm pretty excited to be mentioning a Richmond player as well, because I do deep down love Richmond. 87.5 grand with a price tag of 61 points. So fairly expensive for a forward, but not too bad. So she's the primary scorer for Richmond other than Katie Brennan, who did come back last week and didn't really hamper her scoring that much. So Wakefield was still able to bring back an awesome score. Richmond are going up against GWS and North Melbourne, so should be some decent scoring opportunities there. Currently 0.5% owned and 0 in the top 100, so another really lowly owned player to be throwing out here. And she's shown that she can get 70 plus points when she's playing against these easy teams, such as like a GWS, and maybe not so much in North, but we'll see. Yeah, so she's my forward pick.
And I got to say, Jono and I were sitting watching her play in the Carlton-Richmond game, and I was saying to Jono, I think she's a cheeky chance at making the All-Australian squad, if not the team. There's been some good goal scorers this year, so she's probably going to miss out on the team, but in the absence of Katie Brennan, she has stepped up in a big way, so...
Yeah, I definitely don't mind it. My only concern would be that to get to the 71 on the weekend, she did kick an actual bag. She kicked 4 goals, which was her career high. And my concern would be if she's not going to... is she going to do that this week against the Giants? Because if she doesn't, then her ceiling might be a bit limited. It could be a 50. Which, if you're paying up at 87.5K, I'd wonder if there are other options around that price that are still unique. I'm not sure. I'm just...
Well, why don't you give us one then?
nervous.
Who have you got on your list?
Just quickly, Liam, you desperately want to talk?
I just wanted to say, Jono, it's like hearing my own voice saying, the fact that they score lots of goals is a problem.
It's almost like we've spent an ungodly amount of time together, Liam. Yes. Yeah.
I love that it's not Katie Brennan though, who was the one I was worried about for. It's Courtney Wakefield playing the same role. I love the cosmic resonance of this entire moment.
Yeah. I will say, Mel, that the player that I'm bringing up also has some flags. But I'm feeling good about it. I'm going to talk about Jess Fitzgerald from the Western Bulldogs. I think she's in great form, if not good fantasy form. And that's where my flag comes in. But earlier this year, she was on a great run of high scoring. I think she had a run of 60s and above, which was very impressive. Last couple of weeks has put up some lowish scores, but it's not necessarily due to role change. She's still getting lots of time in the middle. She's still getting coaches' votes. She's just not getting as much of the ball. So the next two games are still a fairly easy run for the Bulldogs. I'd expect them to win both playing West Coast, who give up a lot of points, and Carlton, who give up a lot of points. So I'd be jumping on her.
So when you say that she hasn't had a role change, but she's got lower points, is that just because of the matchup? Or is that something to concern about maybe her fitness level at the moment? So?
Yeah, I think it's some teams are just tough to score against. And last week was against St Kilda, and St Kilda have these random games where it's really restrictive. I wouldn't say necessarily
they really do.
Has happened as much this season, and Ellie Blackburn still put up a great score last week. But yeah, she, for whatever reason, she just wasn't getting around it. I'm struggling to read the Bulldogs at the moment, if that's not clear from the last few weeks of me talking about Bulldogs players.
Like, I feel your pain. I try and pick Bulldogs players as captains options, and I swear I don't think I've got it right at a single point this season. Because I'm like, okay, yeah, Kirsty Lamb, 2 great games in a row. She's like Alice Edmonds, like #1 player. Throws up a 40. Like, I don't understand them.
Yeah.
Like, they don't score that many skilling scores either until Alice Edmonds has the third 100 plus ruck score for the year.
Yeah.
It's all very weird.
Yeah. Why is Alice Edmonds even the ruck when it could have been Celine Moody? I guess we know now. She's been phenomenal all season.
Because she was a
She's
great ruck.
ridiculously good cap ruck.
because Celine Moody said she wanted to go up forward as well, which...
Do you reckon the writing was on the wall because she sees what Alice Edmonds can do in training? Because, like, the run of form she's in, I don't know about you guys, but I think she needs to be the All-Australian ruck, and I don't know if it's that much of a competition.
I think so. I think the only person who's close is Brianne Moody.
We are still waiting to see her be announced as ruck for AFLW Team of the Week.
Surely this week.
Surely this week. It would be an outrage if she isn't.
But that's my pick, I suppose, for the forwards. Will, what about you?
Yeah, I've gone for Daria Bannister from Essendon, priced at 77,100, so slightly below Wakefield and Fitzgerald. 0.6% ownership, 0 in the top 100. She has benefited so much from her move to the Dons this season. Prior to this year, she'd only had a small handful of scores over 40, and this season, in the last 5 weeks, or 5 games that she's played, she hasn't dropped below 50. The small flag there is they do play Melbourne this week, which is a very tough matchup, but they do finish against Port Adelaide, so I think she's a good unique option. She's playing quite a fantasy-friendly role across half forward for the Dons, so I quite like her as a left field option.
There's another pretty good forward from Essendon. Should consider bringing into your team. Scored a massive 3 last week.
Fetty Frew. No, I rate the call of Daria Bannister massively, but for next week. I think you bring her in for that Port Adelaide game because she looked excellent on the weekend. I also think that her games against Geelong and Collingwood, she's only scored 50s in both of them, but they've belied the impact that she's had. She's a super high impact player, and then kind of finally got that higher level fantasy reward against Sydney on the weekend.
What about you, Liam?
My pick is someone who doesn't come in with amazing form, but has done it in the past, and that's Greta Bodie. She was someone that I think all 4 of us, or at least 3 of the 4 of us, owned at the back end of last year. She comes in at 0.8% owned and 0% ownership in the top 100 at 75k. So kind of even cheaper than some of the other players that we've been talking about. She is someone who can definitely kick goals, comes off a 69 last week, and then has a decent couple of matchups to end the season. If you're looking for someone in that 75k range, which is only a little bit cheaper, a little bit more expensive than a Hannah Ewings or an Ella Roberts, I think Greta Bodie could finish the season with a 65 and a 70, which I just don't know you can expect from either of the rookies.
Yeah, no, I really rate this pick. I think Brisbane's in for some amazing form. They're going to run home very, very strong, and she'll be a great beneficiary. I like the pick.
Yeah, my only flag, I suppose, is Collingwood. We've mentioned have a very organised backline. That should be quite a good game, but I think Brisbane is in such irresistible form that I wouldn't be too worried.
I think the reason why I'm a little bit less worried about the Brisbane game is
Collingwood game,
is the kind of extremely good goal kicking form of a Jessie Wardlaw means that Stacey Livingston actually has to play on a much more lockdown role and can't just lay off the back. And we kind of even saw a little bit of that when Emma O'Driscoll went up forward and actually put a bit of pressure on the Collingwood backline because she could take a contested mark and was kind of dragging Collingwood defenders away from those really easy, just like, oh, well, we'll just wait for a dump kick and take a mark. So I think the other options that exist there, and I also think that the pace of Courtney Hodder is pretty unique. So I think all those factors combining, I think this is the toughest forward line to go against. And I think that the style of play that Bodie is will be the beneficiary because I don't know who the natural matchup is that has Bodie's skill.
Mm-hmm. So quick question, now that we've whipped through our forwards. We know that a lot of people that didn't have Bowers have been selling the farm to get her in. We're probably coming into a bit of money with Randall being out. If you don't have, say, Agano, who is the other exceptional player on their line, do you sell the farm to bring her in? Or are there too many other good forward options that she's not quite on that Bowers level of desperation if you don't have her?
I don't know if she necessarily fits into that same Bowers level. And I think even if she was almost close, I think that this season has shown to bear, and I think it's shown to bear in previous seasons, that in the instance where a large number of people who are highly ranked are going to have a player, you're best off trying to maximise and find two good players who can outperform than trying to sell the farm to get up to just one, where all it would take is, a bad game against Richmond, for whatever reason. She has Ellie McKenzie kind of sit on her for the entire game. Who knows what it could be, in the same way that they had, Richmond ran a tag against Maddie Prespakis. That's a completely normal thing for Richmond to do in the final round. I don't think it's worth it. I think she still is the best forward, just not worth kind of paying that extra, whatever it is, 15, 20k on top of Randall.
Yep, I like it. Liam, do you want to run us through your captains?
Yes, so I didn't get a chance to write a full Captain's Call article last week, but I did put together a tweet thread with a few options. Now, went pretty chalky. Started off with Bowers, and that was kind of on the pod last week, and she's followed it up with just stupidity. Across my options last week, I'd say my two failures were Hatchard with a 60, but, at least I put a bit of chest behind it. She was my captain as well. And then Maddie Prespakis, who had Bridie Kennedy running around with her all game. But across the options I gave, the average was 100, basically 100 points. So, again, another week of I'm good at picking the captains thing, just not great at my own team.
It's a rough one. It's a rough one. Who have you got coming this week?
Oh, I think it's... you can't pick anyone but Kiara. If you are, then you have some intestinal fortitude that I do not.
Yeah, it's hard to go against it. What about this? Do you think that Turbo is going to have the Bridie Kennedy tag this week?
I don't think it matters.
Yeah, she's in pretty good form.
There's a reason why... Even when she won the W award, she was the highest scoring fantasy player. Everyone knows she's elite, but why? You can tackle someone, you can tag someone, but if they tackle everyone on your team, the tag doesn't do anything. And her thing is like gut running, and like Bridie Kennedy has shown herself to be a competent player this year. I don't think there are many players who are running as well as Kiara Bowers is right now.
Okay, so we've got a question from our number one pod fan,
Bailey.
Ham to Bowers with Genome Anderson as utility, or through to Anderson, Ali Anderson, with Ham as utility?
I would have said Bowers, but Anderson as utility worries me. I don't mind just going for Anderson and going safe with Ham in this case.
You've got to find a better way to describe the two Andersons. I'm sorry. I'm worried about Anderson, so instead I'd go Anderson.
Don't do Anderson. I'm going to start that again.
No. I think you got it.
All right. Yeah, I think... Yeah, Janome Anderson worries me. I had her on field this week. Scored a 22. Top score of 38, I believe, so far this season. I would be more comfortable bringing in Anderson with Ham as the utility.
Jono and I were having a very heated discussion about this before the podcast started, but it's very difficult watching kind of Montana Ham kind of sit on a wing and as a halfback this year. Just knowing that when she does actually go in the midfield, she's just such an elite clearance player, and it's been tough to watch given we know what first-year players can do when they're given full midfield time, like we saw with Rowbottom and Pressparkers last year.
Oh, gee, she's going to be a tempting prospect for next season, I must say.
What else do we have here? I like this question. From Valor Longer. Haven't been able to get Bowers. Do I just forget about her and cry?
Yes, you do.
That is beautifully worded.
As the one equipped to give that answer,
all been there.
as the one equipped to give that answer, yes, I will be crying some silent tears whilst I present this face of happiness and willingness to engage in Bowers-related questions.
Fantastic. Well, we'll answer that one then. Ben Russell says, which option for next round is better? Brazil and Anderson, which I'm assuming then is...
I'm assuming that's Ali Anderson, not Janome.
Really? Oh, really?
Brazil and Ali Anderson. He doesn't want Gino. Or Carney and Hosking, being Sarah Hosking. What do we reckon? I like the latter, but I'm a Hosking fan.
I think I like the former. I think we've kind of talked up Ali Anderson this week and Brisbane's run, and I think Ash Brazel continues to look good with the extra run in her legs at AFLW level. Not to say that she wasn't fit coming into it, it's just a different type of fitness to the netball.
I think Brazel's been working into some midfield minutes recently as well, which I'm a big fan of, so I'd probably go that option, Brazel and Anderson.
I would personally be tempted by Carney and Lambert for just the 1k more than Hosking.
Oh. So that was not an option, but good answer.
It's Will's way to find a unique answer.
Nice. Love it. Mr. Unique here. And we've got one last question here from Lockie Malks. Which sub-45 grand player is the best to field this week? One of the sub-45 grand players I was having a look at, Lucy Burke, who absolutely roasted me alive last season because she was not very good at scoring. She has put up a fantastic score last week, but that was because she was in the ruck and she got like about 12 hitouts, which was really helping her scoring. With Nauda just taking last week off as rested, if she were to come back, I suspect that those points would move back to Nauda, but I don't know how long she's being rested for.
That was a concussion one, I believe.
No. This was a really strange one. So you had Erin McKinnon go down with concussion earlier this season, and then last week round 7 on field, Simone Naldo went down very early with a shoulder injury. They didn't list her on the injury report, and then rested her. I don't know what it means. I think we need to push for some mandatory injury reporting. I hate all of this. I don't think she's coming back anytime soon.
Yeah. And the problem with this is that St Kilda play on Sunday, so it's not one that you can wait and see. Does Nauda come back? Does she not? I think, therefore, Lucy Burke is too risky. But good thing there's another fantastic option here in Jess Lowe. Jono and Will, fight it out.
Look, I'm going to take this one to start because no, that was
offended.
No, that was a good. That was a. So Jess Lowe.
Maria Sharapova playing tennis.
So Jess Lowe, I brought in last minute with the omission of Sergeant Wilson because I couldn't afford Fetty Fru, so dodged a bullet there. And I got this one at Jono's suggestion, so I'm going to give you all the credit on this one, Jono, because I needed someone who was cheaper than 35k, I think it was at the time. I didn't put her on the field, which was my mistake, but she ended up scoring a 67. She's playing a very fantasy-friendly role across halfback for Fremantle, and I think she is a great option if you need a short stop of a F5 or a utility.
I would be even happier to bring her in and field her this week if we hear more news that Emma O'Driscoll is playing forward again this week. Because O'Driscoll's been playing that intercepting halfback role throughout the year.
Basically, we just need Fremantle to do a Carlton and send all their defenders forward and then send all their forwards back, apparently.
I know I've mentioned this before, but it annoys me no end that I literally talked up Gab Pound as the most consistent top 5 defending option, as though her role was never going to change. And she's now a forward.
Yeah, look, we'll add that to the list of teams that we don't understand. There's the Bulldogs, and now there's Carlton.
And any other options we want to consider?
One option, if you're desperate for a ruck, is Maggie Carris. If Lauren Pearce still isn't playing, particularly going up against Essendon. I think the only flag here is that obviously it's a Sunday game, so you won't know teams beforehand. But if we see in the injury report that Loz Pearce is going to guaranteed to miss another week, I think Maggie Carris could hit 45 and 50, which as your utility is not terrible.
Or as your genuine ruck.
Or as a genuine ruck. Justify the ruck selection, but I think that's an option for me.
Yeah, I'd also like to throw up Taylor Ortlep. I think she was getting midfield minutes for Carlton, which was a big surprise. So
she got a couple of ripping clearances in that game as well.
Looked really good.
Oh my gosh.
Really good. Didn't score too fantastically well, but passed the eye test for sure.
Oh, I mean, for her first game.
Yeah.
Was it her first game? Yeah, I mean, I was looking at my potential trades last week and I was down to one player that fitted in because I was doing my Bowers trade and before the Friday night teams came out, I had a single option that I could bring in to make this work and it was Ortlep. And I thought, Carlton don't need a forward. They're not going to do very good against Richmond. So I went with the only other option that I had, which was Lily Johnson when the Saturday teams came out, just in time. Alas, Carlton did need a forward. What? It's absolutely spewing watching that first quarter in person. Could not believe it.
Speaking of Lee Johnson, I've got one last option who just squeezes under that 45 price range, and that's Ella Bogue from Port Adelaide. Scored a 57 this week, is now priced at 44,300, but is playing a nice midfield role for Port Adelaide. St Kilda and Essendon to finish, so somewhat restrictive teams to come up against, but I think she can probably average 40 from here on out, which makes her a pretty handy utility player.
I like it. Any parting comments? Do we want to run through our trades?
Back in Bowersness.
No, I don't want to. I've decided I'm breaking the format. We're not discussing our trades, and it's roll to credits.
No, come on, guys. It's just 2 more weeks of describing your terrible choices.
2 more weeks, Liam. You can do this. I believe in you.
Hold the line. Describing.
I'm pretty excited about mine for probably the first week in a while.
Nice.
The last 2 weeks I've felt very forced into what I have to do, but this week at the moment, I like to do my trades while we're doing the episode, just to make sure I'm really thinking about it. I'm going to bring in Charlie Thomas, who was already on my trade-in list after watching her last week. And I'm going to go Bodie, who, fantastic idea there, Liam.
Nice.
That was a juicy option. And Jess Lowe for my utility spot, because I did not love having the genome on her 22 as my utility last week. Which means Randall's out. My terrible pick of Ballard is out, and my second terrible pick of Frew is out. So means I've got 1 forced trade and 2 bad trade reversals for 3. What I'm hopeful was 3 fantastic players, and 20 grand left in the bank for next week to go out with a
bang
killer score.
Yeah, I like it.
What about you guys?
I think that combination of Lowe and Greta Bodie is excellent, and it's because I'm doing the same thing. I am.
Oh, well, now I'm not going to do it. Yes.
Cursed. It's cursed.
I know it's cursed. I'm getting rid of Ella Roberts, which leaves me with only Hannah Ewings left at my F5. Yeah, Ella Roberts is just playing a little too deep for my mind, and didn't look like she had the kind of legs. Kind of looked pretty tired on the weekend. And in doing so, I'm also going to bring in Jess Lowe, and then I'm going to get rid of Ruby Sargent-Wilson and Charlotte Taylor from Collingwood in order to be able to do so. And Lowe at my utility. Jono, what are you doing?
I feel pretty forced into my trades this week. So I've got Chelsea Randall, who has to go for injury reasons. I have Gab Pound, who needs to go for being terrible at fantasy reasons. And I think I still want to get Bowers. I know she's very commonly owned now in the top 100, but I'm feeling like...
expensive as hell as well.
Yeah, very hard to chase down. So I'll be chasing out Abby Darrick and getting in Bowers there, which means in my back line, I don't have a lot of cash to be spending. I think at the moment, I'm going to take Will's suggestion of Sarah Sansonetti is going to be one. And with the remaining cash, I think the best player I can afford is a little bit of a risk. But if Maddie Collier can come back from her week off with illness, I think she is very undervalued for what she could put up. So I'm probably going to bet on her, given her uniqueness, and hope that I can sneak my way back towards that top 100 ranking. I'm close enough that I'm still with hope. You never know.
Just for the record, Bowers is now the highest priced player in the game and has made over 20 grand in the last 2 weeks.
And is still 20 grand below her starting price.
Wow.
16,
There we go.
16 grand. Crazy stuff. Yeah, I've got a bit of a combination of these things. I, much like most of the rest of us, have to trade out Chelsea Randall. And as a result of this, I've decided to go a full backline makeover this week. I am getting rid of Randall. I am going unique, as I often do, by getting rid of Eilish Sheeran. And I'm also trading out Charlotte Taylor, who was my utility, to bring in Karen Peterson, Charlotte Thomas, and Sarah Sansonetti to complete my backline.
Yeah, I like all those players. That's a good one.
Very interesting. Can't wait to see how that goes. In a good way.
I think the thing that's blowing me away is that Will, like in the first round, you were maybe 150 points behind us all, and you're just coming home like a steam train. You could end up the highest of the three of us.
I said it earlier, I think I've left my run a bit too late, but I'm pretty chuffed with how I've finished the season. It at least gives me hope that I can finish somewhere close to that top 100. I don't think I'll be able to make it on 2 rounds, but at least
What did you finish? You were
116 last year.
16. If you can get up to 116 again, you'd be the closest of us to...
Look, at this stage, I'm targeting inside the top 200 at this rate. So
yeah, nice.
That'll be a challenge. And if not that, hopefully I can just beat the rest of you guys.
I'm going for the very lofty goal of this week of finally stopping the slide of my rank getting worse literally every single week after round 1. Like, this is the week.
Liam.
This is finally the week.
I believe in you.
Well, we might wrap it up there. Thanks for listening, everyone. We are Free Kick, the Fantasy W podcast. As always, you can find us wherever you listen to your podcasts, or we are on Insta, Twitter, and sometimes Facebook.
Very rarely.
Not Facebook. Don't go to Facebook. I'm Hype LD, and you can find me on Insta and Twitter.
You can find me on Twitter at LMTom1.
You can find me on Twitter at OddsandSteven.
And you can find me on Instagram at WillH_VI.
Thanks for listening, everyone. Bye.
See ya.
Stuff, everyone.